his surname, you will always incorporate him with mathematics. He is also a master's degree holder in education, major in mathematics, graduated in the University of Mindanao Tagum College, year 2021. Next is O, stands for outstanding. He is without a doubt outstanding in his field. He also garnered the top 8 ranking for the September 2018 licensure examination for teachers. R, reliable. One can count on him because he delivers any task given to him. R, responsible. A very humble persona, yet his responsible character shines. In lieu with this, he is the current Associate Dean of BS Ed Mathematics Department in Compostela, the Davao de Oro State College main campus. Lastly, E. He is an expert, a man of few words, yet exudes excellence and a valued faculty member of the teacher education program in Davao de Oro State College main campus. The man of the hour, ladies and gentlemen, Michael C. More Jr. Maed. A virtual applause.
Okay. Thank you, Ma'am Romelin. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible po?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen po. Okay, good morning once again. Good morning, everyone. Before anything else, I would like to say thank you for having me here to share my knowledge in terms of designing and constructing table of specifications. Actually, having TOS and TQs, we do have a lots of experience identifying the weights, identifying the number of hours, and identifying the items, and especially identifying the cognitive levels. We opted sometimes to craft first our test questionnaires before our table of specifications. And we are going to assess that based on the principles of assessment. Before we start with the deeper discussion with regards to this matter, I would like to have first our objective for today's discussion. Okay, the first one, we should recall the cognitive levels of Bloom's taxonomy. What are those revisions? What are why there are changes from the Bloom to Lauren Anderson? The next, identify verbs for each of the cognitive levels. Evaluate the test questions as to their cognitive levels. And lastly, construct a table of specifications. Actually, TOS and TQ is just a usual thing for education graduates, and this is just recalling those important concepts that we should consider in terms of the parts of TOS and the cognitive levels. So, let's try to recall first what are those levels of cognitive that we should consider. We all know that the very lowest or the lowest level of cognitive, we do have knowledge, then followed by comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Actually, it changes from the Bloom's taxonomy to Anderson. And as you can see here, the sentence, it became creating, the evaluation to evaluating, and their level also changes. So, what are the reasons why authors change this these authors change these cognitive levels? These are some of the things that we should be mind of. First is the knowledge is Knowledge is a product of thinking, not a category of thinking in itself. So that is the reason why they changed it into remembering, because they assess that knowledge is more on as a product, not a category of thinking. So that is why they change it into remembering. Next is taxonomy change from nouns into a more actionable verbs. Third one, the comprehension changed into understanding as well as the other levels. Then the synthesis changed to creating. It is because creative thinking is a more complex skill than critical thinking, and therefore not only did the word change, but where it is located on the taxonomy. As you can observe in the first illustration, the creating is the highest level of cognitive level taxonomy. Last one, this is the main reason actually. The older Bloom was more applicable towards younger audiences, but the new Bloom's taxonomy actually accommodates a more comprehensive audience. So this is the major changes as to our cognitive levels in the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so we have here the revised one. It is grouped into two. The first three levels, we have remembering, understanding, and applying. This is categorized as the lower order thinking skills, and the upper three as our HOTS, or higher order thinking skills. So we have analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So for this cognitive domain or cognitive levels, we should be reminded that we should treat this as a ladder. So the simplest one is simple recall of specific facts, that is remembering. Next is grasping of meaning of constructional materials or have some interpretations, that is understanding. Next is applying. We should know that if the students cannot recall something that's for remembering, he or she can't understand. So we should start from the very basic level or the specific level if you want them to properly understand, apply, analyze, and evaluate and create things. Okay, so in analyzing, it's all about taking apart the known and identify relationships. In evaluating, it's all about examining information and make judgments. And in creating, using information to create something new as the highest one. Now let's try to see what are the possible verbs for this level and some examples and tips and identifying those items in our test questionnaires as to where they are located. Okay, let's start with remembering. Actually, this presentation is inspired by a presentation from a video discussion from the internet. Okay, for the remembering, these are the verbs that we need to consider. First is the recalling, restating, remembering. We are expecting to students that they can able to restate, remember, and recall. And what are the types now of questions that we are expecting? So first is it is all about facts. Facts, these are just basic terms, names, dates, and places. And also, we can have a series of steps in doing an activity or process by memorization or memorizing those series of steps. That is part of remembering. These are some of the examples. For example, who is the author of No Limit Angere? This is just a fact. The author of this kind of book. So that is why this is under remembering. Always remember that going back to the verbs, students or learners should only recall, restate, and remember. That's all for the learners. So this is the first example. So simple remembering as the lowest level. Who is the author of No Limit Angere? Second one, what are the steps in doing an activity? So if you are just asking, enumerating, you're allowing your students to enumerate things from the very first step to the last step of different processes, or that is the learner is actually listing. So that is under remembering. Okay, so they are just recalling, they are memorizing the steps. A third example. Why did Little Red Riding Hood scream at the wolf? So sometimes we do assess that this if the question starts with whys and how, this is a more higher level, but actually it doesn't goes like that. You should assess properly what are your expectations or how do the learner answer your question. For this instance, we do have asking why did the little Red Riding Hood scream at the wolf. Actually, in a certain passage, there are specific answers that they should only remember, and the certain answer for this question is not actually implied in a certain passage. They are just going to recall what are the things happened during that during the discussion of that certain passage. They are just going to recall what happened or retrieve ano yung nangyari sa that certain passage. So therefore, this is not a more higher order of higher order of thinking. So this is more of recalling or retrieving of facts. So therefore, it is under remembering. Okay, so these are some of the tips for remembering because most of us do have a lot of questions under remembering. First, we can use WH words, what, when, and where for recalling. If we want our learners to recall something, we can, or we can use other words naman. What, when, and where for recalling. If we want them to retrieve something, we should use we can use why. And for listing naman, we can use how for remembering. Okay? So that's for the lowest level. That's remembering. Second one, the verbs for understanding that we should consider. I know that there are a lot of verbs under different cognitive levels, as you can see in different books, but I only adopted this one or emphasize these verbs because this will make us understand better the concept of the cognitive levels. So first is first verb, interpret, summarize, infer, classify, compare, and explain. That's for understanding. We're expecting that learners can explain the meaning of information. It's all about interpretation, summarization, classification, and explanation. If you are expecting your learners that they should explain for that certain question, summarize, interpret, or assessing the meaning, I mean, explaining the meaning, interpretation of the meaning, that is their understanding. Okay? Okay, let's go back. When we say remembering, when you allow your learners to list down, recall, and retrieve, that is under remembering. When you allow your learners to interpret, summarize, and explain out of the information given, that is understanding. Now let's have the examples. First one, select the best definition of an adjective. So for this instance, let us say that you have choices, and these choices are actually possible definitions for an adjective. Then the students now or the learners will classify these choices as to what is the best definition for an adjective. So therefore, the learners do classify the choices, and it is under, if the learners classify the choices, it is under understanding. Okay, next example. What does the line, what is essential is invisible to the eye, mean? Actually, the learners do just interpret this kind of this kind of ano sana, sentence or phrase. So that is why the learners just interpret. So therefore, it is under understanding. Okay. Again, if the learners just interpret, summarize, infer, classify, and explain, that is under understanding. Third one, what is the main idea of the selection? The students, if you will have a certain selection, certain kind of choices, certain kind of paragraphs, phrases, or certain sentences, or a certain passage for the English major, certain passage, if the students wanted to get some idea, so what are they going to do? They need to summarize the certain passage and assess what is the main point, main idea for that certain passage. So if they are summarizing, therefore that is under understanding. Okay? So that's for understanding. Again, for remembering, recalling, retrieving, listing. For understanding, that's explaining, infer, classify, summarization, and other verbs. Okay? For the applying, we do have also these verbs. We have implement, use, and execute. So if you want your learners to implement something, use something, and execute something, that kind of question is under applying. So in this cognitive level, the learners try to use the learned knowledge in new situations or to solve a real life problems. So this is just if to avoid confusions as to how to identify that this kind of item is for application. You should try to assess first that if the certain knowledge of this certain topic is applied to another context. Okay, again, if a certain knowledge is applied to another context or to solve real life problems, that is under applying. Let's have an example. For example, this one, in a constructivist point of view, how will you teach the different parts of a community to elementary pupils? So the knowledge given to them is all about constructivism. Okay, this is the new knowledge, constructivism. Now, the constructivism is used to in a different setting. So that is why if a certain knowledge is used in different settings, so therefore that is under applying. Okay. So if you use certain knowledge for a different setting, that is under applying. Next example, solve for mathematics. Solve for x using a Pythagorean theorem. So we have here illustration, x as your unknown, 9 given 9 and 6, 9 as your hypotenuse, and 6 as one of the legs. Okay, the Pythagorean theorem is first used for hypotenuse. So we have c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So that is why this is applied. Okay, so that is applying. We should remember always that if a certain knowledge is used in different contexts or in different setting, and if a certain knowledge is used to solve a real life problems, so that is applying. For recalling, you're just retrieving, listing, and recalling facts. For understanding, explaining, summarizing, classifying, and other verbs, or explaining a certain information. For analyzing, okay, we're already done in the first group or the LUTs, the lower order thinking skills. That's the first group from the lowest level or the remembering. Now we are on the second group. We have the higher order thinking skills, starting from analyzing as its lowest. Now, these are the verbs that we should consider in having analyzing. So if you wanted your students to organize something, find, integrate, and compare, you should have analyzing. In this part or in this cognitive level, learners breaks down a whole into a component parts or examining critically. You have a definition and you will give them, the students will try to break down to specific examples and they are going to assess it. That is part of analyzation. Breaking the whole, the key term for that is breaking the whole into parts. Here are some of the examples of the questions for analyzation. Based on the selection above, what does the author believe in? Okay, wait. Okay, so in this kind of question, the learner actually chunks the selection or a certain passage into parts to understand the author. So by chunking those informations he gathered from out of those selection, that is breaking down a certain passage into different chunks and analyzing it. So that is why this kind of question is under analyzation or analyzing. Okay, right? Because the learner chunks the certain selection into parts. Next example, which statement is relevant to the saying beauty is in the eyes of the beholder? Actually, The learner in this type of question or this item will compare different statements to find the best answer. So either you will provide choices for them from choices for them, though choices A, B, and B, C, and D. These choices are possible answers for this kind of statement, and they are going to compare these choices. So therefore, if the students or the learners are comparing something, so that is analyzing. Next one, based on the selection, what will happen next? So the if a certain 'di ba kanina during sa remembering, we do have their steps, what is the next step? So if you are just asking, what is the next step, or a certain steps is actually complete and the learners just need to memorize those steps, the first up to the last one. So that is just simple recurring. In this instance, you are giving a certain type of series of happenings. First situation, second situation, and third situation, and you are going to let them analyze among these three situations, first to third. You are letting them to analyze what will happen next based on the given three situations. So that is analyzing. Okay. So the learner will organize the selection into parts and assume what will happen next. Okay, we are done with analyzation. So going back, we have remembering, recalling, retrieving, listing. For understanding, they are going to explain, classify, or infer the information. Then applying, so using the certain knowledge to a different setting or context or used to solve real life problems. Analyzation, breaking the whole into parts, and we have here evaluating. Now, these are the verbs that we should consider for evaluation. We have reflect, criticize, and assess. If you want your learners to reflect, criticize something, or assess something, so therefore that kind of assessment or question is under evaluating. This is all about making decisions based on reflection, criticisms, and assessment. Let's have an example. Example number one, the students will read a short paragraph. And the short paragraph is all about a person doing an experiment. And your question is, what went wrong on the experiment? So for this instance, the learner actually criticized the study or the paragraph to know what went wrong. So therefore, if a certain learner is criticizing something, so that is evaluation. Next example, we have your selection about an author's point of view. The question is, do you agree with the author? Why or why not? So therefore, this is evaluation because you are just allowing your learner to reflect and will assess if his beliefs are connected in the point of view of the author. So that is under evaluation. Next one, what is the best title for the selection above or a certain passage above? So if you do have choices here, these are all possible titles and you are assessing or evaluating each of the titles. Now, which of this is the best title among the selection? So therefore, if the students is assessing something, so therefore that is evaluation or evaluating. Okay, we are done with evaluating. So let's recall again. Evaluating is assessment, criticizing. We have analyzing, breaking the whole into parts. Application, using the knowledge into different context or setting. Understanding, explanation, summarization, infer certain information. Then the first one, remembering, recalling, retrieving, and listing. Now for the creating as the highest one, it is actually do have simple verbs here. Design, construct, make, and produce. If you allow your students to design something, construct something, make something, or produce something, that is under creating. So the learner actually creates new ideas from what was previously learned, what they remember. You should remember that, as what I have said earlier, kanina, that in the Bloom's taxonomy, you should treat this as a ladder. So you should start to remembering the concepts. Next, understand the concept. Try to apply the concept. And if you are able to do all of those basic levels in the Bloom's taxonomy, so you can now effectively create something, design, construct, or make something. So as the highest level of um, the cognitive domain. So here are some of the examples for creating or in creating. So make a slogan. So from the first word, make a slogan about drug dependence. So that is under creating. Next one, if you allow them to construct a solution to solve our problems on food shortage. So that is under creating. Then make a short poem about your family. So that is creating. Okay. So actually that's the things that we should consider, because I know that we do have some background knowledge of in terms of having these cognitive levels. Okay, let's recall these cognitive levels again. So we have the remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. For remembering, we should remember that if you just allow your students to recall something, remember, and list. So it is pure memorization. Pure memorization. Always consider this thing. If you allow your learners to just memorize something, memorize lang natin siya. So that is under remembering. Next one, understanding. If you are letting your students or learners to explain something, summarize something, so that is understanding. Next is application or applying. If you just allow your students to apply certain knowledge into different setting or in a um, real life problem, so that is applying. Followed by analyzation, you are giving them a general concept, and the learners will break this into chunks or have some specific parts or examples out of those general concepts, breaking the whole into parts and comparing those specific examples or parts, that is analyzation. Evaluating, this is criticizing, assessing, or evaluating something. And that is evaluation or evaluating. And last one, creating, if you wanted to let them design, construct, make, and produce. So that is under creating or the highest level. Okay. Sige. So let's try to, I do have here examples. These are Q questions, and your task is to identify what level in the cognitive domain is this question or this Q question. Sige. Is it clear po ba yung discussion? Or medyo dili klaro ang thing? Sige. I hope no and that it is clear. So let's try to assess these Q questions as to what specific level of cognitive domain it is. Sige. First one. What are the parts or features of blank? Okay, if you do have this Q question, what are the parts or features of blank?
Remembering.
Okay, we do have remembering. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Actually, this is analyzing in a sense that, for example, you have a certain concept and you are evaluating the specific um a specific concept to its features and comparing its features of out of the specific concept. So you are allowing them to analyze each those features, and therefore, you are letting them to analyze something. Pero since this is a Q question, not a complete one, so that answer by Sir Lloyd can be considered. What if you are just asking them to recall or remember the parts of a certain concept or certain topic? So therefore, we can also consider that answer because this is not actually a complete one. Okay? Sige, thank you. How about this one? How would you classify the type of? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Among those verbs, kanina, if you compare those specific parts out of the whole, out of the whole and giving some examples, and now you are letting them to classify things. So this is under understanding. Remember that this is one of the verbs, classify. Next one, how did blank happen? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So this is actually remembering. Next, why would you agree with the outcomes? Again, why would you agree with the outcomes? Okay, we have here as our answer, evaluating. We are going to assess a certain given concept. Next, how can a model be constructed that would change that? Okay, so from these terms we have here, so we should know that this is all about creating. Sige. How about this one? How can you make use of the facts to blank or dot? Okay. They are going to use this one. This is under applying. Okay. Sige. So these are the things that again you should consider. So there are some points that it doesn't matter what a word you will start your question, as long as when you assess the question, you should try to think again that for this question ba, am I allowing my students to just recall? Or am I allowing my students to explain? For this question ba, am I allowing my students to apply to different setting? Or am I allowing my students to compare? Or am I allowing my students to criticize or assess? Then, in that sense, you're going to identify now what type of cognitive level that question is or that item is. Okay, because there are some points as to if why we can also have why and how to remembering. Not all the time that if the certain question starts with why or how, it should be under analyzing and evaluation. Hindi naman gano'n. So, there are things that we should consider. So, anong focus talaga ng every cognitive level? Okay, sige, we are already done with the identification of the cognitive levels and assessing some questions or items to saan sila nabilong na cognitive level. Now, let's proceed in constructing table of specifications. So, we have here some of the definition for a TOS. So again, based on our experience, that we opted sometimes to craft first our test questionnaires instead of TOS. Actually, based on the principle of assessment, we should really craft first our TOS or the table of specifications before our TQs. It is because TOS should act as your guide in crafting, identifying what type of test, identifying the percentage, identifying the number of items for your TQs. Pero iba yung nangyayari kasi first yung TQ tapos TOS. Pero dapat we should practice that. We should start with a TOS before having our TQ. Okay. So let's define first TOS or table of specifications. First one, a TOS is a tool used by teachers to design a test or exam. Okay, from the definition itself, TOS used to design a test or exam. So, kumbaga, ang nangyayari is that a test is a tool used to design a TOS or yun yung nangyayari sa atin. Pero we should try to correct that one to have the TOS first. So the goal of the TOS is to organize material covered by comparing the number of questions devoted to each level and content, each topic or each outcome. TOS also is a table chart that breaks down the topics that will be on a test and the number of test questions of weight each section will have on the final test grade. So that is for table of specifications. Okay. Uh, Now, these are actually table specifications. If you observe this things that in different institutions, we do have different formats. Different format for the Department of Education. In our contest naman, different ang ating format. So actually, we do have different formats, pero these are the common columns or the major columns for ATOS. We have the type of test, the topics, objectives or learning outcomes, the levels, these are the cognitive levels, number of hours, number of items, percentage, and the item placement. So these are the major columns of a table of specifications. Now, in our context, we do have this format. The first column, student learning outcomes, followed by number of hours, then type of test, next is number of items, then the item placement or location. We have here cognitive levels, then the total and percentage. Now, we're going to try to see how are we going to fill this table out with our SLOs and other things that we should consider. So first column, we have here the SLOs. So we should remember that SLOs should be taken and must be congruent with our syllabus. We should not include SLOs here that is not congruent or that is not aligned with our syllabus. So we should go back with our syllabus. Same with the Department of Education crafting their TOS. They should go back with their CGs, learning plans, their DLL, and or lesson plans. Okay. So in our sense, we should consider our syllabus for this SLOs. Now, next column, we have the number of hours. In the number of hours, di ba, we do have, let us say, actually, it differs, no? Pero we will just count, di ba, every sixth week, we're going to have our prelim, midterm, and final or our examination. So we just for 5 weeks, there is a coverage for a certain course or subject. So therefore, if you do have 3 units for a certain subject, so that's 3 times 5 weeks. 3 stands for 3 hours because we do have 2 sessions. If that is a 3 unit course, so therefore 1 FR for 1 FR per day, 1 FR for 2 days, 1 FR then 2 days, so therefore 1.5 times 2, that's 3 hours. Okay, so for this column, um this should reflect the number of hours you take to attain a certain learning outcome. Kasi if there is a hard time teaching this kind of learning outcomes, therefore that certain learning outcome is very hard for them, and you should give emphasis as to assessing if they really do understand this kind of SLO or have this kind of SLO. Okay, so for this instance, we have 15 total number of hours. And for example, for SLO 1, 1.5, 1.5. So tinuro natin yung first learning outcome for 1.5 hour. Then fourth outcome, for 2 days natin yung tinuro. Then for fifth, 3 days. Then the sixth one, 1.5 hours. So, and that's how we identify for the number of hours. Next, next column, we have type of test. Now, for the type of test, it is our it is on us if what type of test we should have for this learning outcome, specific learning outcome. But we should consider that the the type of test should be appropriate for our learning outcome. If your learning outcome is all about constructing or something like constructing a Venn diagram or an illustrate having an illustrations, tapos your type of test is multiple choice, or you can have multiple choice naman, pero try to consider that kind of test, or you will have identification, um true or false. Consider that the certain learning outcome is appropriate for what type of test do you have. Okay. By the way pala, in test questionnaire, one of the principle in arranging the type of test in our TQs, we should start from a more structured type of test into a less structured. Ano ba yung structured, sir? What do you mean by that? So we should start from those type of test na merong mga choices. Tapos, followed by yung mga last na mga choices, tapos wala na mga choices. Then lastly, for example, most of the time, we have illustrations or essays. So, dapat sa last part yung mga essays, designing, constructing, sa mga last part yun sila. Pero for this one, we should start with, since a more structured one, we have multiple choice or MCQ, then followed by, we have another type here, matching type and true or false. So either you can have multiple choice, either next will be true or false or matching type. Then lastly, identification. Okay, so we are done with the type of test. Next is the number of items. So, for the number of items, first you should decide first the total number of items you wanted to have your examination or your TQ. So for this instance, I decided that I should have 50 items for my exam. So I have 50 items here. So you will be the one to decide how many or the total items for your exam. So 50 for this example. And the formula in identifying the number of items, each outcome is this one. So number of items is equal to number of hours over total number of hours times total number of items. Let us say the first SLO do have a number of hours that is 1.5, and your total number of hours is 15 hours, then the total number of items is 50. 1.5 divide 50, that's 0.1, and 0.1 times 50, so that is 5. So therefore, the number of items for learning outcome 1 or SLO 1 is 5. So there are 5 items. So 5 items as well for all of the other 1.5s here nga mga learning outcomes. Then for 3, okay, we have 10 for if the number of hours is 3. If you do have a total number of items, which is 50. Okay, we are done with the number of items. Next is the identification of percentage per cognitive level. So actually there are no specific rules as to how many o how many yung nasa sa hats, how many yung nasa lots. Pero our practice is that we should give more emphasis in assessing our students their higher order thinking skills. So that's why I decided to have here as 60% the hats, 40% for the lots. So you will be the one to decide yung weights ng ilan lang yung remember ko, how many percent lang yung understand ko, how many percent yung apply, analyze, and evaluation ko, or evaluate. Okay. Next one is if you do have the percentage for cognitive level, you are now going to identify the number of items per cognitive level. So let us say for remembering, you decided to have 20%. So 20% of 50, we have 10. 10% of 50, that's 5. 30% of 50, that's 50. Okay. Next is the item placement. Okay. Some of us in item placement, we just write here the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So I prefer to suggest that we should also try to label it what test na siya. So test 1, test 2, test 3, and test 4. Okay. For SLO number 1, for this learning outcome, I do have 5 questions. And these 5 questions, we will utilize na yung diniscuss natin kanina, kung ano ba yung question number 1 for the learning outcome 1. This question ba is for remembering, understanding, applying, or analyzing. So this is the time na ma-apply yung knowledge natin kung ano lang ba yung mga questions for recall, for remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Okay. Sige. Then next is the total. We're just going to count the number of items per SLO and calculate or compute the percentage. So there are 5 items for outcome number 1, so that is 5 or 10% sa 50 items or the total number of items. So 5, 10% or 50. Okay. Then also for 10 number of items for outcome number 4, that is 20%.
Ayaw ninyo dula eh.
Okay.
Ayaw dula eh.
So the essential thing
Ano
here
guniti?
for
Pakaunon.
TOS is that the congruency, ang
Once.
tinitignan talaga sa TOS natin is that the congruency of the number of hours na tinuro natin yung certain learning outcome or certain topic, then the number of items. Okay? Then the item placement. So ito lang yung mga critical parts here na we should double check in crafting our TOS. Okay, so I think that's all for my discussion in designing and constructing table of specifications. So I will give it back to our MC po.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Michael More. So at this juncture, our virtual stage is open. Do not hesitate to ask any questions you have.
Ayan, lagi
Any
sila avatar dyan.
um Okay, any questions you have about the table specification, educational assessment, or the related topics discussed by our speaker. So your participation is not just welcome, it is vital to creating a meaningful and interactive learning experience. So let's make this Q&A session a dynamic and insightful conversation. So if you have questions, you can chat it in the chat box or you can raise your virtual hands. Yes po, Sir Mark Laurente.
Okay. So, is that all po, Sir Mark? No. Good morning, sir. Actually, sir, it is okay to have an essay sa ating TQ. But we should remember that actually in our TQ we do have assessment. Most of the questions here or type of test are subjective, meaning we do have exact mga responses for MCQ or identification, true or false. Make sure that if we do have essays in our TQs, they should attach rubrics for that and how they going to assess. So that can be considered po, sir. Especially in mathematics, also in problem solvings. So how are they going to rate those type of tests po? So that's still okay po, sir. Actually, sir, for that instance, ina-allow na lang namin yung mga for this type of test, ang number of items that they should reflect is 5 items as since for an essay because kasi yung number of items doon, it should be congruent. Siguro yung mga pinapagawa nating mga essay, so that is a difficult topic for the student. So that is why ina-allow namin yung mga some of um not the TOS to just indicate there how many points or sa number of item how many points for that certain type of test po. Yes sir. Kasi sir if one item lang yung ni-reflect natin tapos sa total overall scores pala ng mga students, di na siya congruent po. Okay. Sige, sir. Since in TOS, this is for our summative assessments po, no? Then for the SLOs that are reflected in our syllabus, some of those SLOs are already attained in our different kind of assessment, in our activities or other related things during our instruction. So we should just try to select SLOs that we need to include in our summative assessment po, sir. Not necessarily that all those SLOs should be reflected in our TOS po. Thank you po, sir.
Okay, thank you po, sir. We also have question here in our chat box from Jason Pukita. Sir, kailangan po ba congruent ang level sa SLO and item placement? Example, analyzing level po ang SLO. Pwede ba ibutang sa evaluating sa item placement?
Okay, thank you po. Actually po, sir, the principle sa in having our TOS, dapat our learning outcome should be congruent as to what because when you teach this kind of topic, but this is your set goal na learners should attain this kind of learning outcome. So therefore, in assessing them, dapat your assessment should be aligned with that specific cognitive level lang po. Kasi if you are just letting them your SLOs that they're going to identify or remember these concepts tapos pinapa-create mo na sila na naka-construct na sila. Ito lang man yung outcome po during na tinuturo ko to yung ako yung subject. So therefore, I should assess as to what is my objectives or my outcome for that certain topic. Pero if included naman po yung mga learning outcome as to include naman po yung mga learning outcome na during sa pag-teach sa that certain learning topic po, that certain topic po. So you can have it naman po to different levels.
Okay, sir. So for the last question, from Joy Gonzalez, ask lang po ako, ma'am, if naa ba tayo minimum or maximum total number of hours?
I think po for the total number of hours po kay we should always base this one sa syllabus po natin. Kasi naka-reflect dito that each week naman I understand po na medyo dili ma-follow ang syllabus kay there are some weeks na dili maka-class po. Pero in our syllabus, if it is 3 units, 'di ba? Each week we should have discussion. So for week 1, if that is 3 units, so that's 3 hours. So 5 weeks, for 5 weeks, that is 15 hours. Okay. So there are sa first sa prelim, those na mga there are TQs especially katong wala na hindi na yun na-include yung mga 'di ba sa first week that is all about orientation. Okay, for the orientation hindi na nila include, that is why sa kanilang TOS 12 hours na lang yung in-indicate nila.
Okay, thank you, sir. Naa pa di ay isa ka clarification. Nay nag-ask, I would like to clarify between the number of questions or percentage between lots and HOTS. Do we have a standard that HOTS questions have greater number of items than the lots questions?
Okay. Actually, in having the table of specification, especially for higher education, we should, as also suggested, that we should have greater number of items for the higher order thinking skills than the lower order thinking skills, since some of these concepts should needed to be applied to a more complex kind of assessments. Pero as to there are no specifics, sir, kung how many percentage talaga per level. I don't know, wala pa akong nakita kung pila jud ang specific level for, each a specific percentage for, each cognitive level po, sir. Pero most, of the time, it is suggested that, mas greater yung higher order thinking skills po compared po sa LATS.
Okay, sir, another question po. Sir, unsa po ang TOS if performance task?
Ano yung question?
From Ma'am Carisha Canietan.
Okay. We do have actually the TOS for the performance task. 'Di ba? Usually kasi, ang ginagawa natin is that na we do have, the instructions or guidelines for certain performances, then there's a rubric, there's a rubric 'no. Tapos, there are my tendencies kasi nga na those kind of performances or, kind of mga task for a student is not aligned with our, um, SLOs indicated in our syllabus. That is why, we decided, here to have some kanang we look for some formats sa TOS for performance tasks, and that is routed mano. Wait lang, pakitahon sa nako.
Um, Hello, Sir More. Good morning. I have a question po. With regards to performance-based examination, do we really need to, do we still need to create a table of specification? And since there are no items, how can we categorize the points or the rubric in the table of specifications po?
Hello po sir. Okay, for a while lang po i-share na ako ang katong kuan sir, katong TOS nga sa performance task po. Hello. Actually wala akong nakita ang kuan sir. Ato na po atong TOS for performance task. Pero sir, for, the format for actually for the TOS for performance task is, different sa katong, having TQs or examination. In the performance task, there are just 5 columns. The first one is the topic. Next is the SLO. The main point lang kasi is that, we should, as we evaluate the task questionnaires or the the guidelines for any performances po, gusto lang namin makita kung ano yung mga mahi-hit nila na mga SLOs out of those performance tasks po sa mga students. Then ano yung mga task prompts, how are these certain criterias or assessments that you are expecting sa inyong mga students. These criterias po are indicated in your rubric. So why do you have this kind of criterias, and what specific prompts that you should the students should try to consider in attaining this specific criterias or assessments po. The main point lang po kasi is that dapat makita lang namin yung mga SLOs po na na-indicate sa syllabus, and yung mga SLOs na gusto mong ma-hit out of those performances po sa mga students. And for the item placement, there are no item placements po, sir.
Okay, we also have another question po, sir. Sa subject na may lecture and lab po, okay lang po ba isang TOS lang na incorporate lahat ng topic po?
Sa like and lab po, okay lang po ba isang POS lang ka-incorporate lahat ng topic? I think during your laboratory po, 'di ba, that's different po as to the lecture po ba? 'Di ba more laboratory more in their performances po or performing, applying po the concepts. I don't know po sa mga 'di ba po, ma'am? Sa mga science po. So, since more on their performance task po yung lab, I think this is different po. Kasi if you will just dito lang. If hindi talaga pwede if like and lab. So, you will have different TOS po for lab.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question po. What is your take po on AI-generated TQs anchored on blooms?
Actually, especially the very known ChatGPT, actually, the AI generated TQs, one of the principle in crafting, especially MCQ, no? So one of the principle in crafting MCQ is that choices should be logically arranged, and there are some loopholes um, in ChatGPT's MCQs. Meron talaga. I don't know what specific prompts, pero I tried different prompts, and you can actually students actually can really eliminate those other choices. Then they can easily um locate the correct answer out of those choices without proper understanding or comprehending the certain stem or problem po
Okay,
ng mga
sir. Another
TQs.
question.
And also, especially in mathematics, I've tried to search questions there sa ChatGPT. There are some solutions for or answers for some questions that are incorrect po. So it is actually it is mas easier po siya, no, for an AI. Actually, siguro we should have an AI, then let's counter check the choices, and kasi sometimes, no, better naman yung mga STEM na generate ng mga AIs. Sobrang ganda yung pagka-construct ng mga stems or problems. Siguro we should improvise lang yung mga choices and double check the answers from the AIs, because we can't deny it na meron naman talagang AI. So let's utilize it to make our life more easier para less ang trabaho. So in utilization of AIs po.
Sir, thank you, sir. So another question po. What about mga lessons na practical, not theory, like accounting?
Asa to mo? What
From
about mga
Pres-
lessons na
Maragusan, DDUSA Maragusan.
for practicals po, siguro if that is more on practical, then you will have practical assessments po. Then you can focus more on the performance tasks of the students po. Kasi if that is more on practical concepts, siguro it is more better to have some authentic assessments for the learners po.
Okay, sir, we have another question. Is it necessary po ba to utilize the routed format of TOS for performance-based assessment or analytic rubrics na lang po? I think maka-suffice naman siya to lessen the subjectivity of the type of assessment.
Okay. Actually, thank you po, Sir Rev. Actually, aside the goal of having the TOS for um the performance task po, sir, is to see what are again the SLOs or outcome is that can be attained out of that certain performance task of the students. In terms of subjectivity naman po, rubric is always is an essential thing in having performance task po. So dapat we should have ng rubrics po. Pero ang iba kasi yung point for the TOS sa performance task po. It is not all about the subjectivity, but the alignment of the certain performance tasks that you will give to your students in the SLOs or outcomes indicated in your syllabus po.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it's the last question. Okay, so do we have any other queries, confusions? Yes po, Sir Mark Laurente.
Eh, actually, good sir. Ay, thank you po. Actually, sir, there's no rule naman na dapat it should be a whole or in decimal. Pero kasi dapat 'di ba, yung dapat talaga na practice is that TOS then TQ. Pero ma-assess kasi ng magche-check ng TOS na una talaga ginawa yung TQ kaysa TOS if yung makikita niya almost all of the percentage there are, so let us say 12.33, 12.69. Kasi if ikaw mismo nag-graph, first mo kinraph yung TOS, 'di ba? Ikaw naman yung mag-decide kung ilang percentage lang ba for this cognitive level, can you remembering, understanding, and analyzing. So that's the issue lang if kanang niyato ang mga mag-reflect sa TOS po. Mas baklaro jud siya nga una gihimo ang TQ kaysa TOS po. Pero sometimes we opted to craft TQ first, then TOS, especially kung short na jud ato ang time. I-admit mo na.
Okay, thank you so much po, sir, for clarifying that because personally, guilty po ko ana nga practice but I hope ma-change na ako na siya nga practices for better nga assessment. So, before we conclude today's webinar, it is my distinct honor to express our gratitude to our esteemed speaker, Sir Michael More, for sharing his expertise and insight with us. In recognition on his invaluable contribution, we would like to present this certificate of appreciation for sharing his expertise during the webinar on designing and constructing TOS in the new academic landscape on November 17, 2023, and his valuable contribution to the event is greatly appreciated. Given the 17th day of November 2023 via Zoom at Davao de Oro State College main campus, signed Mark P. Laurente, Dean BE Ed, signed Sir Pedro P. Raimunde, Dean of DS Ed. A warm applause, everyone.